Thank you everyone for joining us for another edition of our RevOps Co-op video interviews. Today, I'm really excited to talk to Abhijeet. He is the co-founder and CEO of Nectar. He's got some really interesting insights for us today. And so let's jump right into it. Abhijeet, how about you give us an introduction on yourself, what you do every day and why you're excited to be here.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thanks for having me on this show, Sebastian. I'm really excited to come and talk to you today. RevOps Co-op is a community I'm quite close to. I've been an early member for quite some time. So very excited here to share my learnings and experience through the community, as well as like my experience beyond the community in revenue operations and all things growth. So quick background about myself. As you mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Nectar.ai, which is an early stage startup building a platform for revenue operations professionals. It's basically a revenue operations tool, which is implemented in a no-code manner, and it helps RevOps teams break data silos across go-to-market teams and drives data-driven accountability to create a predictable revenue growth engine. And especially in today's time when fundraising is becoming more difficult, inflation is very high and market is going through a downturn, sales productivity and predictable revenue growth becomes even more important. And a platform like Nectar is purpose built for this kind of a phase. So very excited to share what we are doing.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's been this rise of kind of revenue operations and kind of ops focused technology because the job is getting more complicated. We're only working with more and more systems, from the CRM, marketing automation, sales engagement, the product itself. And so, it sounds like you're doing great work over at Nectar.
Yeah, and Nectar was actually a brainchild of my own personal experience. So my experience has been for 11 years across B2B SaaS, out of which around 9 years has been gone into growing and scaling teams. So I grew a business of a previous company I was part of from a 30K ARR to a 42 million ARR.
Wow.
And during that phase, we had a lot of salespeople. Built an enablement function, built a revenue operations function, which was basically fundamental in scaling the growth. So a lot of what we are building at Nectar is actually, the foundation is originating from my past experience where I went through solving these problems myself.
I love it. I think the best software comes out of that need, right? It's something that you saw every day with something that you could use in your role, and now you're creating and filling that gap that you noticed when you were in it. So I'm sure you're going to find the right market fit for that, because you've already demonstrated that the challenge exists there to be solved. Alrighty, so first question for you. This is one that we asked everybody on the video interview series. So what is your definition of revenue operations? And just for you, since you've been in the industry for so long, when did you first hear people talking about revenue operations as a function?
Yeah, in terms of when did I hear it first, it was early 2014, 2015. But I largely heard it from a sales operations perspective, or like an independent marketing operations perspective. But an integrated revenue operations function has been getting popular from 2016, 2017 onwards. That's how like I've seen it. And initially it used to be largely for bigger enterprise sales teams, larger companies with like more than 1,000, 2,000 employees would have like hundreds of salespeople, and they will have a proper revenue operations function built in. But most of the mid-market companies would not have that. But in the last 3 to 4 years, that has changed. The revenue operations is becoming more commonplace, and rightfully so. When you come to definition of revenue operations, the way I look at RevOps is the unsung warrior of the modern go-to-market team, right? A lot of credit goes to quota-carrying sales folks or the sales managers who bring the dollars home, but it takes a village to close a deal, right? And a lot of background work happens, which basically is contributed by revenue operations. So they are largely the unsung warriors of the GTM team. They basically are sort of a backbone, if you may call it, for that modern GTM engine, right? So if you have to build a scalable and predictable high growth revenue engine, you can't do it without building an efficient RevOps engine. A proper RevOps function would largely tie together planning and insights to operations, and integrating it into systems and tools, and then finally enabling it for the users. So they basically tie it through these four pillars. So I call it as a POSE, which is the acronym for planning, operations, systems, and enablement. And this basically brings together the full alignment between sales, marketing, and customer success. You can't look at it as a siloed function. It basically connects across all the major customer facing functions. And some organizations even include product also in it, right? Especially with the rise of PLG. So even product
Definitely.
operations come into it, right? So it's basically a full funnel view of revenue, and how you like basically make that happen. So that's what I basically look at RevOps as.
I like it. Yeah, I like a few things you said there. Like for one, it takes a village to close the deal, right? And even though the operations professionals might not get commission when a deal comes through, the process through which a deal came through was architected by them. They are a
Yeah.
huge part of that buyer journey and making it one that educates, empowers, and then qualifies that person for the sales process. So I love that
100%.
perspective. Can you
Yeah.
remind us the acronym, the POSE acronym? Because I thought that was a really good one again.
Yeah, I mean, just like something I say to remember in terms of what all goes into the RevOps function. So planning, so
Yep.
largely planning and insights, if we look at it. Then operations, then the systems part of it, where you also have like tool implementation and maintenance. And then you got the last but not the least, enablement, right? So these four pillars tie an efficient revenue operations function together. And organizations who are able to get these four pillars right are able to then build a foundation of a predictable revenue engine, which can scale really fast. Any of these pillars are weak, those kind of organizations struggle in terms of growing efficiently.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And I think, if two organizations sell the same product at the same price, it's the one that has, the better operational system that will win. And that's what we're seeing in the market today. It doesn't necessarily have to be even the best product, but it does have to deliver the best experience and move people efficiently through that buyer journey.
Definitely. And today's market is so competitive. It's very hard to maintain product differentiation, right?
Yeah.
So finally, the game changes when it comes to distribution. And within distribution also, like, I mean, a lot of companies raise funding until like this slowdown happened.
Yeah.
But what would differentiate company one versus company two, in which both of them would have raised $50 million in funding, would be like strong operations, right? So the company which will do a better job at revenue operations would be able to grow more sustainably.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we'll jump to the next question. Something I've seen you mention before is, talking about the future of B2B sales. And, as a software founder in this space, that is the future you're trying to create, of course. So, talk to me about the state of B2B sales and marketing today. And, how do you think it will change in the future?
Yeah, definitely. So when I started conceptualizing the future of B2B sales as we see at Nectar, I mean, again, originated through the pain points I personally faced. Most of these pain points were due to poor visibility of data,
Mm,
lack of collaboration, siloed functions, disconnected systems. It just created so much difficulty in terms of scaling. I mean, I was doing quite well when I was an individual contributor. And after that, when I had 5 sales reps, it was
yeah.
still quite okay. I was able to coach and scale them. But the moment we started growing from 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, it started becoming harder and harder. And it was getting increasingly difficult to make every rep successful. It was getting increasingly difficult to optimize our cost of acquisition of customer.
Mm,
It was getting very difficult to basically work out our better SaaS metrics. And a lot of those problems that I faced around predictability and efficient revenue growth were linked to like broken systems or lack
yeah.
of operational efficiencies and processes. I mean, a lot of answers I found when I started investing in revenue operations. But most of it, what I did in my previous company was largely driven from consulting and servicing standpoint.
Yeah.
We were not able to productize it. A lot of things were like custom implemented on top of Salesforce and other tools we used. And that's where I had an idea of a system like Nectar, which comes and starts connecting all of these other data sources, tools, systems, and becomes like a go-to platform for RevOps teams to able to efficiently implement a right process or system, which is generally a luxury for them, and it's a very
Yeah.
common practice for bigger companies and teams. But our vision was to like help mid-market companies be able to use these kind of efficient revenue operations processes through a tool, so that they don't have an operational overhead of implementation, or they don't
Yeah.
have to pay top dollars for consulting, but they're still able to use best in class sales processes and connect their systems and make their sales engine efficient. So when we look at what goes into this future,
Hmm.
it's largely this like a focus on buyer journey. I think you mentioned about like how important in today's world is to understand the buyer journey.
Yeah.
It's not about like the sales process that seller wants to follow. It's about the buying process the buyer wants to follow. So you need to be
Yes.
at the same wavelength as the buyer, map that buyer journey, and that will come when as you start capturing data. Data becomes absolutely critical. A lot of data that buyer and seller are generating across the selling and buying cycles doesn't make its way into CRM, right? So
Mm.
first of all, fixing that data gap is very important. Second, some of the tools or interfaces that buyers and sellers interact with, they need to be very user friendly. Unfortunately, most of the conventional systems that exist in today's world around sales and marketing tools, they're not very user friendly. They're built more for
Agreed.
buyers and not for users. And lastly, automation, right? I mean, with so much of digital workload that has increased, right? There's also a lot of hybrid work going on now with US opening and rest of the world also opening. Like the travel has started, face-to-face meetings have also started. At the same time, we have also adopted tools like Zoom and Gong. So how do you like maintain that hybrid balance, right? So automation is required to a great degree of extent in an omni-channel manner, not just on Zoom alone, but how you can automate across the different touch points that buyers and sellers have. So that becomes very important as well. And then finally, once you start capturing this data, connecting it to the buyer journey, making it user-friendly and automated, you need to also be able to merge the intelligence that comes out of this data into the user's workflow through timely actions. So it's very important to do that, which will unleash true productivity. So that's how we're looking at this future, where there's an efficient RevOps system that connects all the communication channels, connects all the GTM tools, and delivers a best-in-class RevOps process for any organization out there who wants to scale their growth engine in a predictable manner. And that's
Yeah.
how we look at B2B sales. Yeah.
That sounds like a dream, man. Like, yeah, a world where all the systems are connected, the data is clean and capturing all of the events, and that, most importantly, which I think you highlighted, was making that actionable. All the data in the world doesn't matter unless you are changing your approach based on your feedback from the market. And I think RevOps has a big part of that. And like you mentioned, this is, countless systems. In some cases, it could be dozens of systems. And we
Yeah.
can't just simply pay to build an API between all of those systems, or pay to have a consultant run all of those systems. And so I think being able to bring those things together on a platform like Nectar is really helpful in getting to that future, that dream that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And we're quite excited with the way our platform has been built out. And it started showing a lot of traction with the early adopters.
Hmm.
And we want to bring this future out to the wider market as well in a quarter's time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. So next question for you, and you mentioned earlier about reps having and missing quota and kind of the past version of this. So and you see stats like less than 60-70% of reps are hitting the quota that is assigned to them. So why do you think that this is happening so frequently today, and how does RevOps help fix that?
Yeah, a great question, and this question is personally very close to me. This was one
Yeah.
of the reasons why I started Nectar. Right, in 2019, there was an article which Forbes published that 57% of the account executives in North America missed their numbers. And around
Yeah.
that time, I had to also lay off a few of my sales reps. Some of them were like great friends, and I just felt at that time that I could have done a better job in coaching them. The organization could have done a better job in supporting these reps, but unfortunately, we had to take some of those actions with respect to missed quotas.
Yeah.
And that actually got me thinking, and I really wanted to solve this problem. And it was like a pivoting moment for me to leave like a hyper. When I was in a good role in a good place, doing quite well. And then I took this leap of faith and went for entrepreneurship because the problem was very close to me. And the reason I mean, why I feel this problem exists today. So there are few things. I mean, number one is unreal quota, right? Most of the
Mm.
reps that you're seeing missing quota are largely from high growth venture funded companies. So at the outset, they are into that trajectory of T2 D3 or these days T3 D3 or T3 D2. So which basically creates a lot of pressure. A lot of companies start scaling very quickly, too soon, even before hitting product market fit, and which starts putting further pressure on the reps. So the quota at the outset are very high, but that's not an
Yeah.
excuse, right? I mean, that's not an excuse, although that's one important reason. But this high growth pressure and they moving very fast to hit these unreal quota creates a lot of gaps and shortcuts, right? Where you're not investing your time in creating core systems and processes or taking a data-driven approach, right? Because a lot of startups raise a lot of funding, so they start throwing money at the problem and buying tools, hiring more reps, hiring more people to like do operational work. That doesn't fix the problem; it just amplifies the problem. So what used to exist at a smaller scale now starts getting magnified, and not you don't have an operational leverage because you're not invested into fixing your data, fixing your tools and systems in the early days. Um, and all of this leads to like very poor enablement, poor investment in enablement and processes, because of which reps become like coin operated machines. And it's sad, but it's a true reality where a lot of reps then like fall into the trap of hiring and firing,
Yeah.
and that creates all of these gaps. There are also gaps related to training. There are gaps related to like not focusing on leading indicators, but just focusing on the missed quota and doing a quarterly review and taking decisions versus proactively looking at like a daily, weekly, monthly cadence on what are the leading indicators, right? I mean, if I have to like hit a certain quota, what's the pipeline cover I need in order to deliver that pipeline cover? What's the pipeline I would need in terms of opportunities? And for delivering those opportunities, how many leads I would need and how many meetings I need to do. Out of those, how many meetings would be generated through inbound, how many would be generated through outbound, what will come through network. A lot of that like focus on leading indicators doesn't happen due to like fast growing pressure.
Yeah.
It creates a very artificial, unreal quota and loop, which results into very poor sales efficiency. So there's no one single answer on why reps miss quota. It's like an aggregated problem
Yeah.
where basically it's amplified, and that's where a function like RevOps can come in and fix it, because a RevOps takes a horizontal view across the organization. It's not tied into one role or one function. It cuts across levels from an SDR to a BDR to an AE to a sales manager to a VP sales. And similarly, from a functional standpoint, it cuts across product, customer success, sales, and marketing. So they have a very unique view with respect to tying all the process systems, data, and tools across the value chain. And they will be able to like bring in the right next steps to fix some of these, right? In some organizations, RevOps are also empowered with respect to planning and strategy. So they will also get involved in setting the right quota, incentivizing, setting the commission structures. So RevOps becomes an extremely important function to set rep productivity for success.
Gotcha. Yeah, that really hit close to home for me because I was that sales rep. And I'll never forget the first time I asked, why is our quota this way? And it was a long math equation that ended with the investors gave us this much money. And we had to keep up with that number no matter what. And there was no indicator within our performance or the market that would justify that increased quota. So yeah, it starts there with the setting the expectation. And I agree with you that when RevOps is in those strategic conversations, they can tell you that this quota is not realistic given our current coverage, activity, pipeline, etc. So yeah, I agree with that on all counts.
Yeah, and RevOps need to have a seat at the table, and especially in the current times, right? I mean, most of the advice that is floating around on Twitter or LinkedIn, across the VC ecosystem or even the founder ecosystem, as you'll see in the last few
Yeah.
weeks, is all about predictability and efficiency, and hitting targets become even more important, right? I mean, it's not just about like growth; it's about predictable revenue growth with a higher efficiency. So RevOps will play even bigger role in these times. So they definitely need to have a seat at the table in order for organizations to come out of this constant downward spiral of reps missing quota. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. Alrighty, so we'll move on to the next question. You've been in the kind of SaaS world for a while. You've scaled a team from very small to very large. So you've kind of at this point seen many iterations of the same challenges, successes, etc. So in over the course of your career, how have marketing, sales, success, and those revenue facing functions changed over time?
Yeah. So in the last 5 years, especially, the whole GTM tech stack space has exploded. It's literally exploded. If you look at the different eras across the SaaS tools, I mean, ERP started happening around 1980s to 1990s. Then CRMs came in. Siebel was the biggest CRM.
Yep.
And then Salesforce happened in 1998, and like it was offered on the cloud, and it democratized CRM for everybody out there in the world. And it's a very successful company, and they've done a great job in like bringing CRM to everyone. After that, you've seen company like HubSpot come in the later 2000s, and then a lot of marketing tools came in after that period, right? And sales, and then you'd seen companies like Gainside, which came around 2010 2011, and they started putting customer success on the map as well. And we have a lot of tools around customer success. And sales tech is something which is like very nascent, right? Out of all of these, I think it's like last 5 to 7 years where we have seen proliferation of tools, right? I mean, there are multiple tools that have come in now. So that's my first take. What I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, the number of tools have exploded across these functions, and especially sales tech, which is very nascent and it's fast evolving. RevOps as a category is emerging, and seeing the focus that it should have seen like probably 10 years earlier, but nevertheless it's happening. What's happened so far is that companies have raised a lot of money. So I mean, the first tactic is to throw money at the problem before fixing the basics, and that's been like a consistent pain point, and that would result into a lot of startup deaths in the next few months because of like the current fundraising climate. So companies which are efficient will basically continue to grow and become more and more successful, whereas companies who have artificially grown but don't have the right product market fit and don't have the right RevOps system in place, they will really struggle in terms of like growing into their existing valuation or growing and reaching the KPIs which will be required to raise the next round of funding. So that's also one of the things that I've seen, basically, which is changing very fast. And then fundamentally, what's happened because of proliferation of all of these tools is it's created endless silos. It's created disconnected data, which has resulted into disconnected systems, and that's leading to disconnected teams. And all of it is driving efficiency down, right? And to add to this challenge, because of more number of tools, adoption is becoming a very big challenge, right? I mean, over 50% of the tools out there, and even like the dozens of tools that you mentioned, a typical B2B SaaS GTM team will have, they don't see adoption. right? So adoption is another big challenge.
Yeah.
So if you talk to any RevOps person today, I think they will hate to talk to any new vendor or
Yeah.
use any new tool. I mean, that's the first major objection, that we already have a few tools to deal with. Don't want to
Yep.
talk to any new tool, even if that tool is valuable. Number two objection you'll get is that, like, they are basically struggling with users they have to like spend a lot of effort to make users even use and try existing tools. And then on top of it, any new tool that you implement will have access to your Salesforce, will have access to your business communication systems and other GTM data. So that creates a lot of privacy and security challenges. And then like it creates another point solution or silo point, right? So most of the RevOps, I mean, the way RevOps is moving forward compared to like the last 5 years is moving away from point solutions to like aggregating and integrating, and then also investing time and effort in solving for these adoption challenges. So that's the trend that I've been seeing personally. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's insightful. And I think I've been seeing very similar things. And so, that the game has changed, so to speak. And I think the explosion of technology that you mentioned was the catalyst that kind of, got us to this place. And so, what would you say to a software founder that, they are going to market for the first time? How does somebody build a successful go-to-market strategy in today's B2B SaaS landscape?
Yeah, I think staying very focused, in fact, laser focused on the problem is very important. The customer discovery becomes extremely important before building product. And also after building the product, the positioning becomes very critical, right? Because in today's market, like there's a lot of noise, a lot of competition, a lot of fatigue across buyers, right? So you need to solve for some of these fundamental challenges before going to market. And once you figure this out, which is basically a 0 to 1 journey, then distribution becomes even more critical, right? I mean, companies need to go even more aggressive when they're product market fit ready, and distribute the product. I mean, some of the good examples out there are like companies like Gong and Outreach, who
Mm,
have done a great job at like finding product market fit and then scaling. But even these companies started like 5 to 7 years back, right?
yeah,
Companies just starting in 2020s. I think for them, the bar is even higher.
yeah, agreed, agreed. So then how do we help spread this message of revenue operations? So how do we make sure that more business leaders are thinking through the lens of revenue operations when it comes to the function, its methodologies, and its associated technologies?
Yeah, I think communities like RevOps Co-op are doing a great job. There are like some of the other communities also out there who are also spreading the awareness. And
Mhm.
they are like industry-wide startups like Nectar were also bringing new tools and technologies into the market. But as individuals, what we can do is we should be sharing best practices across our network. It's important to spread the awareness, and it's important to spread the learnings that we all are finding, the do's and don'ts, what's working, what's not working. I think as a community we need to all lift each other. I think it's very important. There are a lot of frameworks which can be replicated and reused by a lot of companies, right? So they need to be like mutually shared and exchanged and offered like freely for anybody to implement. And I think the sales is a very unique function where you see a great blend of science and art. So the art part of it obviously needs more training, and a lot of it is natural. But the science part of it can be like, um, I would say, templatized and made it more process driven. And that's where I think if as a community we can start sharing the science of scaling, which basically is largely driven through functions like RevOps. I think it will really help everyone out there. One more thing that's required is, I would say, education. I think I don't think so. In college, they don't teach sales, first of all, right? Which is
Nope.
like very surprising.
Yeah.
And I mean, they should actually be not just teaching sales, they should be actually teaching sales operations or revenue operations. It's such a critical resource in any GTM organization, but you don't have like a specialized course out there right? Where I think if these kind of like curriculum are introduced, or there are like a modern, I would say, education management companies, or even platforms which are basically doing certifications. I think we need more of those. And it could be a very interesting career path. I think we've seen a very interesting career path coming through the SDR journey. A lot of like sales professionals start their career as SDRs or BDRs. I think these are the folks who are customer facing, who like to be in front of the customer and enjoy that face-to-face interaction. But there are folks who could be really great at contributing on GTM, but they are more operations savvy, data savvy. They're more technical counterparts to the front-facing teams. I think they can start their career in like sales ops, right, or revenue operations. So it is also a very interesting career opportunity. And I think a lot of this awareness needs to be spread in the market, right? I mean, how people can come in and start building their career in RevOps. I think that will also like create a great culture and an ecosystem and a flywheel, which basically will elevate most of these businesses going forward.
Yeah, yeah, and I could be an advocate for that because my journey into RevOps was through the SDR function. And so I got to be the end user of
Yeah.
the operational system, and now I build those operational systems. So I think it's a great path. And I think that's what you said earlier was compelling in that, why not build sales operations courses at your local business school?
Yeah.
They're teaching marketing, so why not, talk about the processes and technologies that
Yeah.
pull somebody along a buyer journey and make it a more, mainstream kind of educational function. So I think, maybe your next project after Nectar is, Professor Emeritus at a university, building an operations course.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're giving me a good idea for my retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel free to take that idea. I won't trademark
Yeah.
it. Alrighty, so we're getting towards the end of it. We have two more questions. What I wanted to ask you is, from your perspective, as a both business owner and now investor, what are the things that you look at in a software company that makes you think this is one that has earned or deserves an investment? So what do they have to be doing right in order to earn that investment to sustain their growth?
Yeah. So I think I invest more like an angel investor, and that happens very early. I mean, most of the time, like you're investing as the first check in the company, or like along with like the first institutional investor.
Mm,
So I think there are only few factors that are relevant at that point of time. There's hardly any data, right? So there's no
yeah.
business to measure. But what's there is like the team, there's market, and then there is the timing. I think these are the three important factors to be kept into mind, which I personally look at. And
Mm,
then like how well the team has understood the problem. So the articulation of problem needs to be also very clear. If the team is able to define the problem really narrowly and deeply, that means they've understood their market and ICP in and out, and which would mean they would have also looked at the timing of that opportunity, right? So I look at these factors before investing, and that's generally helped me.
I like it. All right. And then, speaking of kind of advice, what advice do you have to new revenue operations leaders? People that are maybe a team of one, they came from sales management, they came from finance, maybe they were SDRs. How do you, what advice do you have to people that are new into revenue operations and trying to build out their careers in the function?
Yeah, I think first of all, I would want to say that now is the best time to get into revenue operations, right? There wasn't a better time than what exists today. Multiple reasons. One is just the sheer scale of like companies who need revenue operations has grown multifolds, and there's like absolutely lack of talent out there, right? Very few folks who get it, right, or who get the entire spectrum of the full funnel. You'll
Mm,
find people will probably be good Salesforce administrators, or people who are great at business analysis, or people who are good at technology management, but you'll hardly see a right balance with like all the three in one place, right? So
mm,
I think somebody who can, and this is just sales ops, like, so imagine like this marketing ops, customer success ops, and product ops, and that's where like a RevOps leader comes in or the RevOps manager comes in who is able to have like a full funnel view. So it's I would say there's so much of opportunity and very limited talent pool out there. So anybody who would want to, like any AEs out there who don't want to continue to take quota and want to like maybe move into a different role within the GTM team, I think RevOps is a great opportunity to get in, right? Or folks who are like wanting to start their career into RevOps from a different function other than sales, I think it's a great time to get in. Second, and I would and it shows in data as well. So I think I forgot the source, but one of the places where I've read in 2018 there were 20% of the companies out there who had RevOps team or a title that existed in their organization. In 2019 that number grew to 33%, and in 2022 their expectation is that 58% of the teams out there would have RevOps, right? So there's a massive growth that's happening, which is out there in the data as well. And you just do a LinkedIn search with RevOps title and you'll see thousands and thousands of professionals come in and look at that data over the last 5 years, and that's just grown multifolds, right? So now is the best time to get in terms of like a specific advice for folks for getting in, I think would be to understand the basics really well, specialize into understanding the tech stack, right? Understanding the landscape, because there's so much to be done in the function and there are like so many distractions, so many choices being thrown out at today's RevOps leaders. It becomes very hard for them. I mean, buyers today are confused. What tools should they consider, right? Everybody's talking the same language. There's like new shiny tool out there every month. So how do you understand which tool will add value? And are you overpaying for the tool, or you're like, or having too many tools to integrate with, and there's a lot of adjacency and overlap also in today's tools. So it's very important for RevOps professionals to understand the tech landscape, which basically will help them take better decisions in their organization. So my advice to them would be to understand the whole technology landscape and understand the name of the game. And thirdly, look at their data flows. I mean, first of all, before scaling or buying any new tools, look at whether your data is clean. I mean, are your reps updating CRM? If they're updating CRM, what's the data loss that's happening? What's your maturity in terms of like your CRM adoption itself before you start introducing new tools, right? It's important to take those steps. And once they are clear with these steps and they have those answers, then they can start introducing the right tools. And once you do it properly with the right strategy, I think these modern tools will actually amplify the business. I mean, they are like very successful companies who have grown multifolds and continue to have GTM distribution as a key differentiation because they have laid a proper foundation of RevOps.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Abhijeet, and thank you for taking the time today. You know, your insight and experience is very much welcome. I think there's some gold in what you've been saying. So, you know, if you're either trying to get into RevOps, you're a business owner trying to figure out RevOps, or you are already actively working in RevOps, there was something for you in this last half hour to 45 minutes. So thank you again for joining us. And I'll leave you with either, parting thoughts and also the best way to reach you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sebastian. It's my pleasure to be there today on the show and share my learnings with you. So if anybody wants to connect with me, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I go by my name, Abhijeet Vijayvergiya, and you can search on me. I'm an open networker. Feel free to add me. I'm also there on Twitter. You can follow me there as well. I tweet occasionally on that. And then you can follow us on our company page also, which is nectar.ai. And you'll be able to, we keep sharing a lot of like helpful stuff, templates, roadmaps for modern revenue operations professionals. And yeah, I mean, you can see me on RevOps community as well, RevOps Co-op. I do try to participate in the community as well. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thanks again for joining us. And thank you for the community for tuning in. I hope you learned something from this video recording.